Welcome back. China and Ukraine's foreign minister speaking by phone yesterday. The conversation, a signal that Chinese President Xi Jinping could soon speak with Ukrainian President Zelensky for the first time since Russia's invasion. Joining me right now is the Atlas Organization's founder and the author of China's Vision of Victory, Jonathan D.T. Ward. Jonathan, it's good to see you. Thanks very much for being here.
Hi, Maria.
So far, Xi Jinping has supported Russian President Vladimir Putin. There's no way around that. There's no way to suggest otherwise, given the fact that he has called the sanctions outrageous. Your thoughts on what Xi Jinping might want to say to Zelensky?
Well, I think they're playing both sides here. I mean, trying to sort of keep up an appearance of being a good actor, especially for a European audience. I mean, their trade with Europe is very important to their long-term strategy. And at the same time, they're, I'd say, a fervent supporter of Moscow. I mean, we see that in all their ideological communications that, both in their own language and, even publicly. I mean, the meeting between the Russian and Chinese foreign ministers is also one that was sort of in keeping with their no limits partnership declaration. So it's pretty clear whose side Beijing is on, but they believe that they can fool the rest of us, and they've been very good at that, honestly, for years, into thinking that they're a responsible actor. I mean, that's the game they play, and we're playing it with them for the most part by not calling.
So what are your thoughts about what? I'm sorry?
We're just not calling them on that in a significant enough way. I mean, we haven't imposed real consequences yet.
What kind of consequences should be installed at this point? I mean, Zelensky is begging for weapons. I don't know why it's such a slow walk to get these weapons, but we're still waiting to get those MiG jets to Ukraine so that they can have air power and air cover. During the past 41 days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, China has continued to blame the United States. Beijing also says that NATO should have been dissolved after the collapse of the Soviet Union. Jonathan, what is China going to do here? Is it looking to partner with Russia and then ultimately acquire Russia, overtake Russia in terms of all of its minerals and mining riches?
Well, I think what's really going on here, Maria, is as many people understand, I mean, China is preparing for war with the United States in Asia. And if and when that happens, they want Russia as their partner on that day. This is a joint idea of taking down the U.S.-led order. I mean, they've been absolutely clear about that in their communications. And, being able to work together, I mean, building their military relationship and having that underlying economic relationship in which China absolutely has the upper hand and therefore a great deal of leverage over Russia. But they have a shared joint ideological enterprise. Beijing is recycling Moscow's propaganda, and they're, I think, on the same page about their idea of contesting the United States in both Europe and Asia. So that's really the deeper heart of this matter. Beijing is not going to throw that away because they sort of need Russia in order to fulfill their broader geopolitical goals. So for those reasons, I mean, I think it remains a very robust partnership, but they've obviously put themselves in the trap of having, at this point, raised a lot of skepticism in Europe. And I think people are calling into question their economic relations. And that's where we need to take action. I mean, the idea that we're going to keep on building or deepening economic relations with China is just, totally misguided at this point. Not only the genocide and the military buildup, but the support for Moscow in the first, major land war in Europe in 75 years. I mean, this should be enough for us to understand that it's time to roll back the economic relationship. And you can start by looking at the Chinese companies that are going to be, tacitly engaging with Russia as the regime comes under further pressure. And that's going to be a space, I think, for sanctions. I think we should be bold about that.
Well, look, let's talk about the capital markets levers, because unwitting investors are still owning a lot of these Russian companies and Chinese companies, by the way. Over the last week, the CCP said that it is willing to allow some companies to get audited that are traded on U.S. exchanges. But you've got pretty much this administration refusing to prohibit Americans from holding any Russian securities, China securities, as they are, in effect, funding the expansion of the CCP, funding this war on Ukraine. Your thoughts in terms of the levers to pull to push back on this totalitarianism?
Well, I think that there are very powerful levers, that the U.S. has at its disposal. I mean, investment bans can be enacted, I think, relatively somewhat readily, and you need to expand that across, I think, state-owned policy banks that are, enacting the major strategic enterprises of the CCP. The general financial ecosystem that props up their military-industrial base. I mean, that's more than the military-industrial companies themselves. It's the financial corporations there that are allowing that to all sort of function efficiently. And then I think that the other issue is the sort of, crisis that we have among our business leaders who I think just do not understand this. Their understanding of history and geopolitics, I think, is really not up to this moment. And, Larry Fink released his letter to shareholders just a couple of weeks ago, and he said, most of us never imagined that in our lifetimes we would see a war like this waged by a nuclear superpower. It's not that hard to imagine. I mean, they've been talking about it, both Russia and China. And this is a firm that has, told people to triple their allocations to China last year. You look at just something like BlackRock or Apple, which makes the, vast majority of its products still in China. I mean, the business leaders are not yet moving on this, and it can't be the government alone that decides that. I mean, the government has its hands full with other issues, but we have to have a consensus among our national security and business leaders that things must change, when it comes, especially to China. I think Russia is the precedent for that. You can understand what risk exposure really looks like, but it's time for the business leaders at the highest possible level to start rethinking China and rethinking their strategies, and to stop telling people that this is okay, because it's not. They're going to get themselves in trouble, and most of all, they're going to get this country in trouble.
Let me switch gears now, Jonathan. I need to switch gears. Chinese authorities have extended Shanghai's COVID lockdown to cover all 26 million people in the city. After 13,000 new cases were reported, the number of infections tripled in just over a week's time. Shanghai's quarantine policy has been criticized for separating children from parents, Jonathan. What do you think is happening in Shanghai, and why the now new lockdown that we're seeing across this city? This is obviously the city of Shanghai, but that is an international city, and this is impacting the world in many cases.
Well, sure. I mean, I guess, they're taking the response that they initially had to COVID to have lockdowns and try to go for the zero COVID policy. But obviously, I mean, it's going to affect supply chains and global connectedness, obviously, and contribute, I think, to the need for people to rethink economic connectivity to China. Obviously, the policies of the CCP are very much in their own vein. I mean, if they decide they're going to do something like this, they're just going to do it. And, for people to keep trying to anticipate that, I think misreads the fundamental problem of having to rely on a government that can do that sort of thing to be part of the sort of global industrial base. And I mean, you just have to, I think people are starting to get that part of it, but that piece is unreliable.
Okay. Jonathan, good to have your take. Thanks very much for being here this morning. Jonathan Ward joining us. Thank you, sir.